The knock that changed everything. Billionaire Jacob Whitmore thought he had it all, until a determined 6-year-old showed up at his door asking for a job for her mother. But when he learns the truth about Emma and her mum, his world is turned upside down. Will he reclaim the family he never knew he had? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The evening shadows stretched across the marble floors of Jacob Whitmore's mansion. At 45, he had everything money could buy. A successful business empire, a 20-room estate overlooking the ocean, and more cars than he could drive in a month. But on nights like this, the emptiness of his massive home seemed to mock him. Jacob loosened his tie and poured himself a glass of whiskey. Another boring charity dinner with people who only cared about being seen with him. He'd made $1 million donation just to escape early. The soft knock at the front door surprised him. His housekeeper had left hours ago, and he wasn't expecting anyone. Who would visit at 9 in the evening without calling first? He opened the heavy oak door himself, expecting to see one of his business associates with an emergency. Instead, he found a little girl. She was tiny, no older than 6, with dark hair pulled back in uneven pigtails. Her coat was too thin for the chilly November air, and her shoes were worn at the toes. But what struck Jacob most were her eyes, large, dark, and somehow familiar. "Can I help you?" he asked, glancing past her for an adult who must surely be nearby. The girl straightened her shoulders. "I came to ask for a job. For my mommy." Jacob blinked. "Your mother sent you here? Alone? At night?" "She doesn't know I'm here," the girl admitted, twisting the hem of her dress nervously. "But she needs help. She works all the time and she's always tired. Sometimes we don't have enough food." She paused, then added, "She says people like you don't help people like us, but I thought maybe you would." Something in Jacob's chest tightened. The child's directness caught him off guard. He knelt down to her level. "What's your name?" "Emma," she said. "Emma Matthews." "And where do you live, Emma? How did you get here?" "We live in the apartments behind the grocery store. I took the bus. I saved up my lunch money." Jacob frowned. A 6-year-old riding the bus alone at night was concerning enough, but there was something about her last name that tugged at his memory. "What's your mother's name?" The girl hesitated, then whispered, "Lena Matthews." Jacob's world stopped. His vision blurred. His breath caught in his throat. The glass of whiskey nearly slipped from his hand, because Lena Matthews wasn't just anyone. "Your mother is Lena?" he repeated, his voice suddenly hoarse. Emma nodded. "Do you know her?" Know her? Lena had been his college sweetheart, the love of his life, the woman he had walked away from 12 years ago. He had chosen his career over her, convinced that building his empire was more important than building a life together. It had been the biggest mistake of his life. "Yes," he said slowly. "I knew her. A long time ago." Jacob studied Emma's face more carefully now. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her chin, the determined set of her small mouth. The resemblance was unmistakable. This wasn't just Lena's daughter standing on his doorstep. This was his daughter. "Emma," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "does your mother ever talk about your father?" Emma shook her head. "She just says he had to go away before I was born. Sometimes she looks at old pictures at night when she thinks I'm sleeping." Jacob's heart hammered in his chest. 12 years ago, he had ended things with Lena to pursue a business opportunity in Europe. She had begged him to stay, to choose her over his ambitions. But he had been stubborn, convinced that he was doing the right thing for both of them. "I'll make it big," he had promised, "and then I'll come back for you." But he never did. His business had taken off, one success leading to another. Months turned into years. By the time he returned to the States, he had convinced himself it was too late to look for her. And all this time he had a daughter. "Emma, you shouldn't be out alone at night," he said gently. "Let me take you home." "But what about the job for my mum?" Emma's eyes filled with worry. "She works at the hospital. Cleaning rooms, but she's always saying it's not enough." "I'll talk to your mother about that," Jacob promised. "Come on, let's get you home." Jacob grabbed his car keys, his mind racing. What would he say to Lena after all these years? How could he explain his absence? And how would she react to seeing him again? The drive to the apartment complex was tense. Emma directed him through streets that grew progressively more run down until they reached a weathered building with peeling paint and security bars on the windows. "We're on the 3rd floor," Emma said proudly. "Apartment 3C. Jacob parked his Bentley, drawing stares from a group of teenagers loitering nearby. He took Emma's small hand in his as they climbed the stairs, each step bringing him closer to the confrontation he had avoided for over a decade. The hallway smelled of fried food and cleaning products. A bare bulb flickered overhead as Emma knocked on her apartment door. "Mommy, I'm home!" The door flew open, revealing a woman in nurse's scrubs, her face pale with worry. "Emma, oh my God, where have you been? I've been looking everywhere for you." Lena grabbed her daughter, pulling her into a tight hug. Then she looked up and saw Jacob. The color drained from her face. For a moment she seemed unable to speak, her eyes wide with shock. "Hi, Lena," Jacob said quietly. "Jacob." His name fell from her lips like a whispered prayer. Then her expression hardened. "What are you doing with my daughter?" "Actually, she came to see me," he explained. "She took the bus to my house." "What?" Lena looked down at Emma in disbelief. "Emma, why would you do something so dangerous?" "I wanted to ask him for a job for you," Emma said, her voice small. "You said we needed more money." Lena closed her eyes briefly, clearly struggling to stay calm. "Emma, go to your room while I talk to Mr. Whitmore." "But Mom, now please." Emma reluctantly disappeared down the hall, glancing back at Jacob with curious eyes. When they were alone, Lena's composure cracked. 12 years, she said, her voice shaking. 12 years without a word, and now you show up at my door. "I didn't know," Jacob said. "About Emma, I swear I didn't know." "Would it have made a difference?" Lena asked bitterly. The question hit him like a physical blow. Would it have? He wanted to say yes, but the truth was more complicated. "I tried to find you," he said instead, "after I came back from Europe. But you had moved, changed your number." "I waited for you," Lena cut in. "For 2 years I waited. I wrote to you about the pregnancy, but you never responded. What was I supposed to think?" Jacob felt the floor shift beneath him. "You wrote to me. I never got any letter." Lena laughed, a hollow sound without humor. "Right, of course you didn't." "Lena, I swear, it doesn't matter now," she interrupted. "Thank you for bringing Emma home, but you should go." "She's my daughter," Jacob said, the words feeling strange and wonderful on his tongue. "Biologically, maybe. But where have you been for the first 6 years of her life?" "She doesn't even know you exist." The truth of her words stung. "Let me make it right," he pleaded. "Let me help you both." Lena's expression softened slightly. "We don't need your charity, Jacob." "It's not charity. It's responsibility. Please, at least let me talk to you about this for Emma's sake." Before Lena could respond, a crash came from Emma's room, followed by a cry of pain. They both rushed down the hall to find Emma on the floor beside a toppled chair, holding her arm and crying. "I was trying to get my book from the shelf," she sobbed. Lena knelt beside her, gently examining her arm. "I think it might be broken," she said, her voice tight with worry. "We need to go to the hospital." "My car's outside," Jacob offered immediately. "I'll drive you." For a moment Lena hesitated, her pride warring with practicality. Then she nodded. "Okay, thank you." The emergency room was crowded, but Jacob's name seemed to work magic. Within minutes, Emma was being examined by a doctor while Lena filled out paperwork. "She'll need an X-ray," the doctor informed them. "And if it's broken, a cast." Lena bit her lip, and Jacob could see the calculation in her eyes, the mental tally of what this visit would cost. "I've got it," he said quietly. "All of it?" "Jacob, please, Lena, let me do this." As Emma was wheeled away for her X-ray, Lena turned to him. "This doesn't change anything." "I know," he said, "but maybe it can be a start." The wait for Emma's results gave them time to talk. Really talk, for the first time in 12 years. Jacob learned that Lena had left nursing school when she got pregnant, taking on cleaning jobs to support herself and her baby. Only recently had she managed to complete her certification as a medical assistant. Emma's a great kid, Jacob said. You've done an amazing job with her. She's everything to me, Lena replied softly. She's smart, kind, and stubborn like her father. Jacob smiled at that. I want to be part of her life, Lena. And yours, if you'll let me. Before she could respond, the doctor returned with news that Emma's arm was indeed broken, but a clean break that would heal well. As they watched their daughter get her bright pink cast, Jacob made a silent promise to never again let ambition blind him to what truly mattered. Later that night, as he drove them back to their apartment, Jacob knew one thing for certain. The little girl who had shown up on his doorstep had changed everything. His carefully constructed life would never be the same, and for the first time in years he felt truly alive. 3 weeks had passed since Emma had shown up at Jacob's door. 3 weeks of careful negotiations with Lena, who remained skeptical of his sudden appearance in their lives, but Jacob was determined to make up for lost time. Are you sure this is a good idea? Lena asked as she helped Emma button her coat. It was Saturday morning, and Jacob was taking their daughter to breakfast and the zoo, their first outing alone together. Mom, I'll be fine, Emma said, excitement making her bounce on her toes. Her pink cast was covered in colorful signatures from her classmates. Mr. Jacob said we might see the baby tigers. Lena shot Jacob a look. Just have her back by 4, okay? And call me if anything happens. I promise, Jacob said. We'll be careful. As they walked to his car, Emma slipped her small hand into his. The simple gesture made his heart swell. He helped her into the booster seat he'd bought specifically for these occasions, making sure she was securely buckled in. Your mom worries a lot, Jacob commented as he started the car. Emma nodded seriously. She always says it's her job to worry about me. She's right about that, Jacob agreed. That's what parents do. Are you my dad? Emma asked suddenly, her dark eyes watching him intently. Jacob nearly missed a stop sign. He hadn't expected the question so soon. He and Lena had agreed to take things slowly, to give Emma time to adjust to his presence before revealing the truth. What makes you ask that? He said carefully. Emma shrugged. You look at me the way my friend Zoe's dad looks at her. And you have the same eyes as me. Mom said my dad had to go away, but maybe he came back. Is that you? Jacob pulled the car over, turning to face his daughter. You're very smart, Emma. Yes, I am your dad. Your mom and I were going to tell you together, when the time was right. I knew it, Emma grinned, triumphant. Does this mean you're going to live with us now? It's complicated, sweetheart. Your mom and I haven't seen each other for a long time. We need to figure things out. Emma's smile faded slightly. But you're not going away again, right? No, Jacob promised, his throat tight. I'm not going anywhere. The rest of their day together was perfect. Emma chattered non-stop at the zoo, her excitement contagious as they moved from exhibit to exhibit. Jacob took dozens of photos, marveling at how quickly he had fallen in love with this little person who was half him, half Lena. Mom is going to love the stuffed tiger, Emma said as they headed back to the car, clutching the large plush toy Jacob had bought her in the gift shop. I hope so, Jacob smiled. He had bought Lena a small gift too, a delicate silver bracelet he'd spotted in a shop near the zoo entrance. It was similar to one he'd given her for her birthday during their college days, a bracelet she had mentioned, losing years ago. When they arrived back at Lena's apartment, Emma raced inside, eager to show her mother everything they had seen. Jacob followed more slowly, carrying the gift bag with Lena's bracelet. Mom, we saw elephants and tigers and I had ice cream and Dad bought you something, Emma announced in one breath. Lena's eyes widened at Emma's use of Dad. She glanced at Jacob questioningly. She figured it out on her own, he explained. She's pretty observant. I see, Lena said, her expression unreadable. Emma, why don't you go wash up while I talk to your dad? When Emma had disappeared into the bathroom, Lena turned to Jacob. We agreed we'd tell her together when she was ready. She asked me directly, Lena. I couldn't lie to her. Lena sighed, pushing her hair back from her face. Jacob noticed how tired she looked. Long week? He asked gently. Double shifts, she admitted. The hospital's short-staffed. Jacob frowned. Despite his offers of financial help, Lena had refused to accept more than child support for Emma. Her pride was both frustrating and admirable. "I brought you something," he said, offering her the small gift bag. "Just a token." Lena hesitated before taking it. When she opened the box and saw the bracelet, her eyes softened. "It looks like the one you gave me in college." "I remember how much you loved it," Jacob said. "I thought maybe—" "Thank you," she said, slipping it onto her wrist. "It's beautiful." An awkward silence fell between them, filled with unasked questions and unspoken regrets. "I should go," Jacob said finally. "I have a business dinner tonight." "Actually," Lena said, "I could use your help. My babysitter cancelled and I'm supposed to work the night shift. Would you mind staying with Emma? It would give you 2 more time together." Jacob blinked, surprised by the offer. "Of course, I'd love to." After Lena left for work, Jacob and Emma settled in for an evening of board games and pizza. As he tucked her into bed later, Emma asked him to read her favorite story. "Mom always does the voices," she informed him solemnly. Jacob did his best, earning giggles from his daughter as he attempted different voices for each character. When the story was finished, Emma looked up at him with serious eyes. "I'm glad you came back," she said. "Mom's happier now. She smiles more." Jacob swallowed, the lump in his throat. "I'm glad too, sweetheart, more than you know." After Emma fell asleep, Jacob wandered around the small apartment, noticing details he had missed before. The bookshelf full of medical textbooks, the wall covered with Emma's artwork, the single-framed photo of Lena and Emma at the beach, both smiling broadly at the camera. His phone buzzed with a text from Victor Hayes, his oldest friend and business partner. "Need to talk ASAP. Problems with the Henderson deal." Jacob frowned. The Henderson deal was worth millions, a contract they had been pursuing for months. But for the first time in his career, a business crisis didn't seem like the most important thing in his world. He texted back, "With Emma tonight. Talk tomorrow." Victor's response was immediate. "Since when do you put anything before business? This deal is our future." Jacob didn't bother responding. Victor wouldn't understand the transformation taking place in him, how finding Emma had shifted his priorities completely. When Lena returned home at 7 the next morning, she found Jacob making pancakes with Emma in the tiny kitchen. "Mom," Emma exclaimed, "Dad's teaching me how to flip pancakes. Watch." She attempted to flip a pancake, sending batter splattering across the counter. Almost, Jacob laughed, helping her clean up the mess. Lena watched them together, a mixture of emotions crossing her face. "You didn't have to make breakfast." "We wanted to," Jacob said. "Sit down, you look exhausted." As they ate breakfast together, Jacob couldn't help thinking how right this felt. The 3 of them around a table, sharing food and conversation. This was the life he could have had all along if he hadn't been so blind. "I've been thinking," he said, as Emma went to brush her teeth. "This apartment is pretty small for the 2 of you." Lena's expression immediately closed off. "We're fine here." "I know you are," Jacob said quickly, "but I own several properties in the city, including a 3-bedroom condo downtown that's sitting empty. It would be closer to Emma's school and your work." "Jacob, just think about it," he urged. "It's not charity, it's practicality. The place is paid for, it's just collecting dust." Before Lena could respond, there was a sharp knock at the door. Jacob opened it to find Victor standing there, his expression thunderous. "So, this is where you've been hiding," Victor said, pushing past Jacob into the apartment. "Did you forget that we have investors waiting? The Henderson meeting was rescheduled for this morning." "Victor, this isn't the time," Jacob warned, glancing at Lena, who was watching with concern. Victor's eyes swept the small apartment before landing on Lena. Well, Lena Matthews, now I understand." He turned back to Jacob. "Is this why you've been distracted lately? You're playing house with your old flame?" "Watch your tone," Jacob said, his voice dangerously low. "Lena is Emma's mother." "Emma?" Victor repeated. "Who's—" At that moment, Emma came bounding back into the living room. "Mom, can we go to the park with Dad today?" Victor stared at the little girl, then at Jacob. Understanding dawned on his face. "You have got to be kidding me. A kid? This is why you've been blowing off meetings? She's my daughter, Jacob said, moving to stand between Victor and Emma. And yes, she's more important than any meeting, Victor laughed humorlessly. The great Jacob Whitmore, brought down by a kid and his college girlfriend. Your father would be so disappointed. My father was a miserable man who died alone, Jacob replied coldly. I'm not following in his footsteps. You'll regret this, Victor warned. The board won't be happy to hear their CEO is suddenly playing family man with some random... That's enough, Lena interrupted, stepping forward. Emma, go to your room for a minute, okay? When Emma had gone, Lena turned to Victor. I don't know who you think you are, but you need to leave. Now. Victor sneered at her. This isn't over, he said to Jacob, before storming out, slamming the door behind him. In the silence that followed, Lena looked at Jacob with concern. What was that about? Will this cause problems for you? Jacob shook his head. Victor's just upset because I've been less available. Lately he'll get over it, but Jacob wasn't so sure. Victor had been with him from the beginning, helping build Whitmore Industries from the ground up. They had always shared the same vision, success at any cost. Now that Jacob's priorities were changing, Victor clearly felt betrayed. Later that day as they walked through the park, Emma ran ahead to the playground while Jacob and Lena sat on a bench watching her. I'm sorry about Victor, Jacob said. He had no right to talk to you that way. Lena shrugged. I'm used to people like him, looking down on people like me. You're worth 10 of him, Jacob said firmly. Always have been. Lena smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. You've changed, you know. The old Jacob would have chosen that meeting over a day at the park. The old Jacob was a fool, he admitted. It took a 6-year-old showing up at my door to make me see what really matters. As they watched Emma climb the jungle gym, Lena hesitantly reached over and took Jacob's hand. Maybe we could try that dinner you've been asking about, just the two of us. Jacob felt a surge of hope. I'd like that. What neither of them noticed was the black sedan parked across the street, its tinted windows hiding Victor as he watched the happy family scene with narrowed eyes. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. It's me, he said when the call connected. I need you to dig up everything you can on Lena Matthews and her daughter Emma. Jacob's lost his mind and I need leverage to bring him back to reality. As Emma waved to her parents from the top of the slide, Victor took a photograph with his phone. Jacob Whitmore had built an empire through ruthless determination and sacrifice. Victor wasn't about to let a woman and child destroy everything they had worked for. The battle for Jacob's future and his soul had just begun. 1 month later, Jacob stood in the spacious living room of the downtown condo, watching as Emma twirled around in excitement. Is this really where we're going to live? She asked, her eyes wide as she took in the floor-to-ceiling windows with their spectacular view of the city. What do you think? Jacob asked, glancing at Lena, who was inspecting the kitchen with a mixture of appreciation and unease. It's the biggest place I've ever seen, Emma declared. Can I pick my own bedroom? Of course, Jacob smiled. There are 3 to choose from. As Emma raced off to explore, Lena ran her hand along the granite countertop. This is too much, Jacob. It's not, he insisted, coming to stand beside her. Emma deserves space to grow up. And you deserve to live somewhere safe, close to your work. Lena sighed. I don't want her getting used to all this luxury. What happens if things don't work out between us? I can't provide this kind of lifestyle on my own. Jacob took her. I'm not going anywhere, Lena. Not again. Their dinner date the previous week had gone surprisingly well. Years had passed, but the connection between them remained, buried beneath layers of hurt and mistrust that were slowly being peeled away. 1 month, Lena said finally. We'll try living here for 1 month. Then we'll reassess. Jacob nodded, knowing it was the best he would get for now. Lena's pride and independence were part of what he loved about her, even if they sometimes made things more difficult. Mom, Dad, come see my room, Emma called from down the hall. They found her in the largest of the secondary bedrooms, standing by the window that offered a view of the park across the street. I can see the playground from here, she said excitedly. Can we paint the walls purple? We're just trying it out for a month, Lena reminded her. We're not making any permanent changes yet." Emma's face fell. "But what about all our stuff?" "We'll bring what we need," Lena assured her, "and the rest can stay at our apartment for now." Later that day, as they moved essential items from the apartment to the condo, Jacob received a call from his assistant. "Mr. Whitmore, I'm sorry to bother you on a Saturday, but Mr. Hayes insists it's urgent. The board has called an emergency meeting for Monday morning." Jacob frowned. "Did Victor say what it's about?" "No, sir. Just that your presence is mandatory." Since their confrontation at Lena's apartment, Victor had been coldly professional in their limited interactions. The Henderson deal had gone through, despite Jacob's absence from the meeting, but tensions at the office remained high. "Everything okay?" Lena asked when he hung up. "Just work," Jacob said, not wanting to worry her. "Nothing that can't wait until Monday." That evening, after Emma was tucked into her new bed, Jacob and Lena sat on the balcony with glasses of wine, the city lights twinkling below them. "I never thought I'd be here," Lena admitted. "When you left all those years ago, I was devastated. I had our whole future planned out." "I was an idiot," Jacob said. "I thought I needed to prove myself, to build something significant before I deserved you." "And now?" Lena asked, her eyes searching his face. "Now I know the only thing that matters is family," Jacob said. "You and Emma are everything to me. The company, the money, it's meaningless without someone to share it with." Lena leaned into him and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. For a moment, he could almost forget the uncertainty waiting for him on Monday. Almost. The boardroom was silent when Jacob entered Monday morning. 10 pairs of eyes watched as he took his seat at the head of the table, Victor's gaze particularly. Cold from his position at the opposite end. "Well," Jacob said, straightening his tie, "what's this urgent meeting about?" Victor slid a folder across the table. "We're concerned about your recent distractions." Jacob opened the folder to find photographs of him with Lena and Emma at the park, of them moving into the condo, even one of him picking Emma up from school. "You had me followed?" Jacob asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "The board has a right to know if our CEO is making sound decisions," Victor replied smoothly. "You've missed 3 important meetings in the last month. You've delegated critical negotiations to subordinates, and now we hear you've moved your new family into company property." "The condo is mine personally," Jacob corrected. "Not company property. It was purchased with company funds," argued Howard Winters, one of the older board members, "for executive use." "Which is exactly how I'm using it," Jacob countered. "I don't see the problem." "The problem," Victor said, "is that you're not the same Jacob Whitmore who built this company. You're distracted, soft, making decisions based on emotion rather than business sense." "And what decisions would those be?" Jacob asked. "The Henderson deal went through. Our quarterly reports show record profits. What exactly am I doing wrong?" "It's not what you've done," Victor said. "It's what you're planning to do." He passed another document across the table. "This proposal to establish a company daycare center, expanded parental leave, flexible working hours for parents. These will cost millions with no return on investment." Jacob had been working on those proposals privately, planning to present them formally next quarter. Someone had accessed his personal files. "Those policies will help us retain top talent," Jacob argued. "Many of our competitors already have similar programs." "Or," Victor suggested, "they're the beginning of a shift in company priorities that the board finds concerning." "Cut to the chase, Victor," Jacob said impatiently. "What do you want?" "We want you to remember what this company stands for," Victor said. "Your father built Whitmore Industries on the principle that business comes first, always. He wouldn't have approved of these distractions." "My father died alone and bitter," Jacob reminded them. "Is that what we're aspiring to now?" Uncomfortable silence fell over the room. "No one is questioning your personal choices, Jacob," said Margaret Chen, another board member. "But your recent behavior has raised concerns about your commitment to the company's future." "I am committed to this company," Jacob insisted. "But I'm also committed to creating a workplace that values family life. There's no reason we can't do both." "The board disagrees," Victor said. "We've taken a vote." Jacob's stomach dropped. "A vote on what?" "Your continued role as CEO," Victor replied, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. "We're offering you a choice. Step back from operational control. Take the title of chairman if you want, and let someone more defocused handle day-to-day operations, or face a formal vote of no confidence." "You can't be serious," Jacob said, looking around the table. The averted gazes told him everything he needed to know. "After everything I've done for this company?" "We're giving you time to consider," Victor said. "1 week. Make the right choice, Jacob." Jacob left the meeting in a daze. In the 15 years since taking over from his father, he'd never imagined the board would turn against him, especially not over something as fundamental as having a family. That evening he arrived home to find Emma setting the table while Lena prepared dinner. The domestic scene hit him hard. This was what he had been missing all these years. This was what mattered. "Dad!" Emma ran to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Mom's making lasagna, and I helped with the salad." "That sounds wonderful," Jacob said, forcing a smile. "Let me just change, and I'll be right back." In the bedroom, he loosened his tie and sat heavily on the edge of the bed. How had things gone so wrong so quickly? He had built Whitmore Industries from a mid-sized company into a corporate giant. Now he was being pushed out because he wanted to be a father to his daughter. Lena found him still sitting there 10 minutes later. "Jacob, dinner's ready." She paused, studying his face. "What's wrong?" He considered lying, telling her everything. Was fine, but they had promised honesty this time around. "The board wants me to step down as CEO," he said. "They think I'm too distracted by us." Lena's face paled. "This is because of me and Emma." "No," Jacob said firmly. "This is because Victor and some of the other board members can't accept that. I want a balanced life. They think business should be everything, just like my father did. What are you going to do?" Jacob rubbed his face tiredly. "I don't know yet. They've given me a week to decide." Lena sat beside him, taking his hand. "Jacob, I never meant to come between you and your company. If this is causing problems—" "Don't," he interrupted. "Don't even think about suggesting we should step back. Finding you and Emma is the best thing that's ever happened to me. The company is just a company." "But you've worked your whole life building it," Lena reminded him. "Your father's legacy—" "My father's legacy was misery," Jacob said bitterly. "He spent his life chasing success and fortune, and he died alone, without a single person who truly cared about him. I won't make the same mistake." Emma appeared in the doorway. "Is dinner time, Dad? Why do you look sad?" Jacob smiled at his daughter. "I'm not sad, sweetheart, just thinking about some grown-up stuff." "Is it about your job?" Emma asked perceptively. "My friend Zoe's dad lost his job and he was sad too." Jacob and Lena exchanged surprised looks. "I haven't lost my job, Emma," Jacob assured her. "But there are some people at work who don't understand why family is so important to me now." Emma looked confused. "But families are the most important thing. That's what they teach us at school." "You're absolutely right," Jacob said, standing up and taking her hand. "Now let's go eat that lasagna before it gets cold." Over dinner, Jacob watched his daughter and Lena laughing together, and his resolve strengthened. Whatever happened with the company, he wouldn't let anyone take this away from him again. The next morning, Jacob arrived at the office early. Instead of going to his usual executive suite, he went to the records department in the basement. "Mr. Whitmore," the clerk said, surprised to see the CEO in her domain. "Can I help you with something?" "I need access to all the company's founding documents," Jacob said. "Everything from when my father started the business, including original shareholder, agreements and board bylaws. If Victor wanted a fight, Jacob would be prepared. There had to be a way to protect both his family and the company he had spent his life building. What he didn't know was that at that very moment, Victor was meeting with someone who had his own reasons to see Jacob fail. Robert Matthews, Lena's estranged brother. "She hasn't spoken to me in years," Robert was saying as he accepted the envelope of cash Victor slid across the table. "But I know things about her past that could be useful to you." "Tell me everything," Victor said, leaning forward eagerly. Across town, Emma was telling her classmates about her new home and her dad, who had finally come back to them. Her teacher, Ms. Daniels, listened with interest. Later, she made a phone call. "Hello, this is Rebecca Daniels from Westridge Elementary. I need to speak with someone about one of our students, Emma Matthews. I'm concerned about some changes in her home situation. As Jacob pored over legal documents in the company archives, he had no idea that the battle for his family was about to extend beyond the boardroom. Forces were gathering against him from unexpected directions, and soon he would have to fight not just for his company, but for the right to be a father to his daughter, Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore. The social worker's voice was professionally neutral as she entered the conference room where Jacob and Lena waited anxiously. I'm Patricia Walker from Child Protective Services. We're not married, Lena corrected automatically. And I don't understand why we're here. Is Emma okay? Your daughter is fine, Ms. Walker assured them. She's in the next room with one of our staff members. This is just a routine inquiry based on a report we received. What report? Jacob demanded, his patience wearing thin. The call had come that morning, a summons to the CPS office regarding Emma. They had dropped everything and rushed over, terrified something had happened to their daughter. We received concerns about Emma's living situation, Ms. Walker explained, opening a folder. Specifically, the sudden appearance of a father figure and an abrupt change in residence. Emma's teacher noticed she's been talking about her new dad and a big new house, which raised some red flags. Jacob and Lena exchanged worried glances. I am Emma's biological father, Jacob said firmly. I only recently discovered her existence, but I've been trying to make up for lost time. And you had no contact with your daughter for 6 years? The social worker asked, her tone skeptical. I didn't know about her, Jacob explained. When Lena and I separated, I was overseas. By the time I returned, I couldn't locate her. I see. Ms. Walker made a note in her file. And the sudden move to an expensive downtown property. Emma mentioned to her teacher that you have lots and lots of money now. Lena flushed. Jacob owns the condo. He offered it to us because it's closer to Emma's school and my work. We're trying it out for a month before making a permanent decision, Ms. Walker nodded. I should also mention that we received anonymous information suggesting that Ms. Matthews has a history of accepting financial support from various men. That's a lie, Lena exclaimed, her face pale with anger. Who would say something like that? Jacob placed a steadying hand on Lena's arm. This is ridiculous. Lena has raised Emma alone for 6 years, working multiple jobs to support her. She's an excellent mother. We have to investigate all reports, Ms. Walker said, her expression softening slightly, especially when they involve such dramatic changes in a child's life. What do we need to do to resolve this? Jacob asked, cutting to the chase. We'll need to conduct a home visit, interview Emma separately and verify your paternity claim, Mr. Whitmore. Until then, we recommend that Emma return to her original residence with Ms. Matthews. Jacob felt a surge of anger. This is outrageous. Someone is clearly trying to interfere with our family. Jacob, Lena warned quietly, getting angry won't help. He took a deep breath, knowing she was right. Fine, whatever it takes to put this behind us. As they drove home from the CPS office, back to Lena's small apartment rather than the condo, Emma sat quietly in the back seat, confused by the day's events. Is it my fault? She asked suddenly. Did I say something wrong to Fizz Daniels? No, sweetheart, Lena assured her. You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups just need to make sure everything is okay when things change quickly. But we have to go back to the old apartment, Emma said, disappointment clear in her voice. I liked my new room. It's just temporary, Jacob promised, meeting her eyes in the rearview mirror. We'll sort this out soon. After Emma was asleep that night, Jacob and Lena sat at the kitchen table, trying to make sense of what had happened. This isn't a coincidence, Jacob said. First the board meeting, now this. Someone's trying to separate us. Who would do that? Lena asked. And how would they know to contact CPS? Jacob's expression darkened. Victor. He's been having me followed. He probably heard Emma talking about our new living arrangement and saw an opportunity. But the comment about me accepting money from men, Lena shuddered. That's so specific and so untrue. No one who knows me would believe that. Is there anyone from your past who might have a grudge? Jacob asked. Someone who would want to hurt you? Lena was quiet for a moment. My brother, Robert. We haven't spoken in years, not since he stole money from me when Emma was a baby. He's always been jealous of anyone who has more than him." "Robert Matthews?" Jacob asked, a suspicion forming. "About 40, dark hair, scar on his right cheek?" Lena stared at him. "Yes, how did you know that?" "I saw him at Whitmore Industries yesterday," Jacob said grimly. "He was leaving Victor's office. I didn't think anything of it at the time." "My God," Lena whispered. "They're working together to separate us." Jacob took her hand. "It won't work. I promise you that." The next morning, Jacob arrived at his office to find his secretary looking worried. "Mr. Whitmore, Mr. Hayes has called an emergency board meeting for noon today. He didn't say what it was about, but he's been gathering signatures from board members all morning." "Thank you, Sarah," Jacob said calmly, despite the anger building inside him. "Please cancel my other appointments." In his office, Jacob made a series of phone calls. First to his lawyer, then to 3 board members he knew he could trust. Finally, he called Derek Sullivan, his investigator. "What did you find?" Jacob asked without preamble. "Everything you suspected and more," Derek replied. "Victor has been moving company funds through shell corporations for years. Small amounts, cleverly hidden, but it adds up to millions. I've documented all of it." "And Robert Matthews? He has quite a record. Petty theft, fraud, even attempted blackmail. He's been in and out of jail since his 20s. Victor paid him $10,000 3 days ago." "Send me everything," Jacob instructed. "I need it before noon." At 11:45, Jacob entered the boardroom with a thick folder under his arm. Victor was already there, looking smugly confident as he chatted with Howard Winters and a few other board members. "Jacob," Victor acknowledged coldly, "I was beginning to wonder if you'd show up." "I wouldn't miss this for the world," Jacob replied, taking his seat at the head of the table. As the rest of the board filed in, Jacob noticed the tension in the room. Everyone seemed to know something significant was about to happen. "Since we're all here," Victor began once everyone was seated. "I'll get right to the point. A week ago, we gave Jacob time to consider stepping back from his role as CEO. Instead of taking our concerns seriously, he's become even more entangled in his personal situation." "What Victor means," Jacob interrupted, "is that I've continued to be a father to my daughter while still running this company effectively." "A daughter who suddenly appeared out of nowhere," Victor countered. "Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? Just when the company is at its most valuable." Several board members shifted uncomfortably. "What are you implying, Victor?" Jacob asked, his voice dangerously calm. "I'm saying," Victor continued, "that you're being manipulated by a woman with a questionable past who sees you as her ticket to a comfortable life. Child Protective Services is already investigating the situation." Murmurs went around the table. Jacob noticed Margaret Chen looking particularly disturbed. "How do you know about a CPS investigation, Victor?" Jacob asked innocently. "Those are supposed to be confidential." Victor hesitated for just a moment. "It's common knowledge." "Actually, it isn't," Jacob said. "Unless, of course, you orchestrated it." He opened his folder and began passing documents around the table. "Just like you orchestrated the embezzlement of approximately $12 million from this company over the past 5 years. The room went silent. "That's absurd," Victor sputtered. "You're trying to distract from the real issue." "The real issue," Jacob continued, "is that you've been stealing from this company, our company, while pretending to be its most dedicated defender." He turned to the board members. "Everything is documented there, the shell companies, the wire transfers, the offshore accounts. I've also included proof that Victor paid Robert Matthews, a convicted felon, to provide false information to Child Protective Services about my family." "This is slander," Victor insisted, but his face had gone pale. Margaret Chen looked up from the documents. "These transfers, they match discrepancies I noticed in the International Division's accounting. I brought them to you, Victor, and you said you'd investigate." "Of course he did," Jacob said. "He was hardly going to investigate himself." Howard Winters cleared his throat. "If these allegations are true—" "They are," Jacob assured him. "My legal team has already notified the SEC. They'll be contacting each of you as board members." Victor stood up abruptly. "This is a setup. You're trying to save yourself by destroying me." "No, Victor," Jacob said calmly. "You destroyed yourself. All I did was uncover the truth. As security escorted a protesting Victor from the building, Jacob addressed the remaining board members. I understand your concerns about my commitment to this company, but I believe we can build something better than what my father created. A company that values family and work-life balance, that sees employees as whole people, not just assets. Your father wouldn't have agreed, Howard Winters noted. No, Jacob acknowledged. He wouldn't. But my father died alone and bitter, surrounded by wealth but nothing else. I'm choosing a different path. To Jacob's surprise, Margaret Chen began to applaud, followed by several other board members. I think I speak for most of us, she said, when I say we'd prefer a CEO who understands what really matters in life. When Jacob arrived home that evening, he found Lena and Emma on the floor of the small living room, playing a board game. "Dad," Emma exclaimed, jumping up to hug him. "Are we going back to the big house soon?" "Actually," Jacob said, looking at Lena, "I have a different idea. How would you both feel about a house? Something with a yard, maybe near the park." Emma's eyes widened. "With a swing set. Definitely with a swing set," Jacob laughed. After Emma went to bed, Jacob told Lena everything that had happened with Victor and the board. "So it's over?" she asked. "The threat to your position, the CPS investigation? Victor's been removed from the company," Jacob confirmed. "And I spoke with Ms. Walker this afternoon. Once they verified my paternity and discovered the source of the false report, they closed the case. We're free to live wherever we want." Lena smiled, relief evident in her face. "I still can't believe how much has changed in 2 months. Emma showing up at your door that night. The best knock I've ever answered," Jacob said, pulling her close. "I spent 12 years chasing success, never realizing what I was missing. She brought me back to what matters." "And what matters now?" Lena asked softly. Jacob took a small velvet box from his pocket. "This. Us. Our family." Lena's eyes widened as he opened the box to reveal a diamond ring. "I know it might seem fast," Jacob said, "but we've already lost 12 years. I don't want to waste another day. Marry me, Lena. Let's be a real family, you, me, and Emma." Tears filled Lena's eyes. "Are you sure? Your life was so different before we came into it." "My life was empty before you came into it," Jacob corrected. "I had everything and nothing at the same time." "Yes," Lena whispered, pulling him close. "Yes, I'll marry you." 6 months later, they stood together in the garden of their new home, surrounded by friends as they exchanged vows. Emma, wearing a flower crown and a proud smile, served as flower girl and ring bearer. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant declared as their guests applauded. At the reception, Jacob found himself standing beside Margaret Chen, who had become a supportive ally on the board. Quite a change from the ruthless businessman. "I used to know," she commented, watching as Emma twirled on the dance floor in her party dress. "The best change possible," Jacob replied. "You know, my father always said that to succeed in business, you had to be willing to sacrifice everything else. I believed him for too long." "And now?" Margaret asked. Jacob smiled as Lena joined Emma. On the dance floor, both of them laughing as they attempted an elaborate spin. "Now I know that success means nothing if you don't have someone to share it with," he said. "Emma taught me that the night she knocked on my door." As the evening drew to a close, Jacob, Lena, and Emma stood together on the porch of their new home, watching as the last guests departed. "Are you happy, Dad?" Emma asked, looking up at him with those eyes so like his own. Jacob lifted his daughter into his arms, pulling Lena close with his free arm. "Happier than I ever thought possible," he told her truthfully. "You know, sometimes the best things in life come when you least expect them, like a knock on the door that changes everything." Emma rested her head on his shoulder, suddenly sleepy after the excitement of the day. "I'm glad I found you," she murmured. "No, sweetheart," Jacob said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm the one who's grateful. You found me when I was lost, and you brought me home." As they stood together in the warm evening light, Jacob knew that no business success, no amount of wealth or power, could ever compare to this. The simple, profound joy of family, of belonging, of love. The knock that had changed everything had led him not to more fortune or greater achievements, but to the realization that what he had been searching for all along was right here, in the eyes of his daughter and the heart of the woman he loved. And that was worth more than all the success in the world. The end.